welcome everybody, and thank you very much for joining us this afternoon for us, but whatever time of the day it is for you. We are delighted to have your company for the next hour for our Oxford MBA Pakistan Alumni panel. I'll start by introducing myself, and then I'll do some other introductions for people who are with us on the panel. So my name is Hannah Griffiths. I'm one of the recruitment and admissions managers for the Oxford MBA. So it is my job to support candidates right from the very beginning when they are maybe thinking about pursuing an MBA, all the way through the application process, and then hopefully once they successfully receive an offer, convincing them that Oxford is the place for them to spend their MBA year. I work largely in Asia Pacific, so we'll support candidates in quite a big chunk of the world, but with amazing diversity across it. And I'm delighted that Pakistan is one of the countries that I get to work within and have the opportunity to meet lots of wonderful prospective candidates for the MBA programme. I'm delighted that we are joined today by a number of our MBA alumni, starting with Dr. Abar Chowdhury. So Abar is an MBA alum, as is required to be on this panel, but he is also a research fellow at the Saïd Business School, and an unofficial 1+1 MBA programme alum as well. So I'm going to be handing over to Abar in a couple of minutes' time to introduce himself and tell a little bit more about his background and talk to you all a little bit about the Oxford Pakistan programme as well. And then in addition to Abar, I'm delighted as well to be joined currently by 3 members of our Pakistan alumni community, and we think that there will be a 4th person joining us in a little bit as well. And they are the real stars of the show today. So the point of this session essentially is to try to give you guys some insight into the Oxford MBA experience, and so our panel will be sharing a little bit about their backgrounds and what they did in advance of joining us at Oxford, and then talking a little bit about their year at Oxford and the MBA, their experience inside and outside of the classroom. We are very open to taking questions as we work through the session today. You'll all see the Q&A button that's on the screen. Please feel free to send through any questions that you have for our panelists as we go through the webinar. I will take kind of the last 10 to 15 minutes to moderate a Q&A session, so can put any of your questions that come through then. And I'm delighted as well that my colleague Hazel Waters is on the call also, so for anybody who has any more kind of application focused or technical questions, please do send those through, and Hazel will be able to send you some helpful information in the background as well. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Abrar just to give a brief introduction and tell us a little bit more about both himself and the Oxford Pakistan programme.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Hannah. It's a real pleasure always to be speaking to prospective Pakistani students. I think one of my ambition at Oxford has been, how do we get more Pakistanis to come here? How do we make these connections? So I'm really thankful that this webinar is being organized, and it's an absolute delight to be here. So just a little bit of my background. I'm actually from Lahore, Pakistan. Did my accounting there, but many years ago was looking at an Oxford, or looking at an MBA program as well, and I looked at many different schools in different places, and somehow my visit to Oxford, when I landed here, somehow something connected. I saw the place, I saw the school, and it meant that this was the right school for me. And then, it's been many years I've stayed on, and I was fortunate, one of those people who's been fortunate to kind of go in different parts of the university. But one thing I wanted to kind of pick out, and again, this is from my experience, something that I spent a lot of time looking at it. When I first walked in the Oxford MBA program, of course, I came from an accounting background, and I was very clear what I wanted to do. And little did I know that in that 1 year, a lot of my trajectory actually changed, because of the moment I came here, I met with 300 other MBAs who were coming from all these different perspectives. I recognized that there was so much more to learn, and there's so much to kind of focus on here, and especially coming from Pakistan, which we know that has many social issues. There's lots of climate vulnerability as well. One thing that really attracted me to the business school was its focus on impact. That's something that it's pretty much built in many of the modules and a lot of research that we do, we say, it's kind of impact driven. So the impact really starts with you, but there's a huge opportunity to learn from kind of different parts of the school as well. The other thing that I found extremely attractive was the fact that while the school is a young school, right, relative to many other schools, it's embedded in a world-class university. And I cannot overemphasize the value and importance of that. That if you come to the business school, you're not just coming to the school, you're exposed to this wider university, which has such fantastic expertise. You'll be part of a college. And, for example, my college specializes a lot on health and management of health. And, when would I have the opportunity to actually learn from health professionals? But I also realized that by meeting so many different disciplines, my learning enhances. So I think that's a wonderful opportunity that you will be exposed to, and that's something that attracted me to the school and actually encouraged me to stay on. And I eventually went to School of Geography. I did a PhD there, but I always kept my ties with the business school, and I'm now back at the business school focusing on kind of these two worlds, like how do we get businesses to think about climate and climate action. So you'll have lots of those opportunities. But I also wanted to touch on a few other things that are very useful for you to consider as you're looking at your applications and the program. I think one is this 1+1 program. And, for many years, I was actually the academic lead for the program as well, chaperoning, all these different students that come in. And this is it's a wonderful program that allows you to do a degree, a 1-year master's in other part of the university, and then apply the learning from that master's, into the MBA. So how do you operationalize some of that learning? So you could be in geography, you could be in music, you could be in engineering, and then come to the business school to get the business skills to, make your idea come to life. And there's a wonderful community that is part of it. And also there's a wonderful scholarships attached to it. So do very attractive scholarships. So do look into it. The other thing is, of course, as I said, and thanks to Hannah and the team, we're really keen to get more Pakistanis into the program. Already there's a thriving, bustling community of Pakistanis in the university. And one key program that I'm also part of in setting up is the Oxford Pakistan program. And that was set up a few years ago by these two actually Pakistanis who came here to study, and they realized that there's so many different Pakistanis studying in different parts of the school. Someone's doing research, someone's teaching. Could we have a program that brings all this community together, and not just from a student perspective, but as a research, as a teaching, as a student community? But also the fact that not a lot of Pakistanis were actually applying to not just the business school, but at the university. And part of that reason was that there's this general perception that it's so hard to get in, or this university is not for me, and it's for someone else. And when you come here, and now that I teach, I realize, no, actually, everyone's more or less similar, right? It's not that someone is, there of course people are bright, they're hardworking, but it's not something that cannot be acquired. So we started this access program where the idea was that students within the university would talk to other students in Pakistan, but also British Pakistanis, and then encourage them to apply, and then show them that actually the students studying are very similar to their credentials. So it started with the access, but then the ambition was raised, and now the Oxford Pakistan program offers multiple scholarships. There's several scholars here. There is a teaching kind of a research collaboration element. There's this wonderful Allama Iqbal lecture series as well, where we bring people to talk about Pakistan, but then link Pakistan to the wider countries. And then finally, there's an opportunity to build networks. And I think when you come to a place like Oxford, you realize that it's not just Oxford that you're in, you're also part of a global network of people from all across the world. And so part of the focus of the Pakistan program is how do we build collaboration between Oxford and Pakistan, and Oxford, for research, for teaching, for visitors. So if you do come and decide to join in, you can be part of that thriving community, but also then meet other students. And then one final thing, just because it's something that I'm doing, and I was just talking to a student recently, just today. One really interesting thing that the MBA program offers are these micro internships, which is really at the end, because we're just now concluding the year. And because I'm supervising several of those students, this was a program that was funded by UNDP to look at climate resilience across the world. So we had, a number of MBAs actually working on multiple projects across the world, learning about climate change. And the student that I was speaking to, she said, I spent the last couple of weeks learning about these things, and I really now feel that I'm kind of understanding, what happens on ground. So through these internships, through these really valuable partnership with businesses, you'll also have an opportunity to not just study or be in classroom, but understand what the real challenges are and how can you apply your business learning, your business tool to solve some of those challenges. So I think it kind of rounds up really well your year, where you learn and then you apply and then you meet many different parts of the university. So on that note, again, I welcome you, and hope that many of you will apply, and many of you I will see here, if not this year, not next year, the year after. So over to you, Hannah, and thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Abraham. We're very grateful for your time and to have you on the call today as well. So I'm now going to hand over to our the real experts on the Oxford MBA, as I always say. So myself and my team will regularly host sessions like this, and we can answer all of the very practical questions you might have about the MBA, about how to apply and about the program, etc. But I always say that the alumni are the real experts and the people who can actually share what spending a year with us at Oxford and completing the Oxford MBA program is really like. So I'm delighted that they have been able to give some time to us this afternoon. So to start, I'm just going to ask each of them to give a brief introduction and say a little bit about what they were doing before they joined the MBA and when they did their MBA, and a little bit about what they are doing currently and where they are based. And then we'll go through some more specific questions about their choice to come to Oxford and some aspects of their Oxford experience as well. So Faria, if we can come to you first, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, Hannah, thank you. So I'm Fariha Anwar. I'm from Rawalpindi, Pakistan. I did my undergrad in dental surgery. I practiced dentistry for 4 years, and then I switched to social enterprise, innovation, startup ecosystem in Pakistan. In my last job in Pakistan, I was working with a nonprofit to establish entrepreneurship networks at universities. So we were helping universities develop entrepreneurial training programs for their students, helping them develop their networks, both regional as well as international. We were also conducting a benchmark study for performance evaluation of these business incubators. So much of my role was to help build the capacity of business incubation managers, particularly with reference to social entrepreneurship and social innovation. I was also heading an impact network, which was a network of 40 different partners from public, private, and donor sectors to bring together. The platform was bringing together all of these multiple sector partners to stimulate, support, and scale social innovations. And we had a lot of projects and programs undergoing with regards to that as well. So after working around 7-8 years in the social enterprise ecosystem, I applied for Oxford MBA. And I was fortunate to get a full scholarship, which was the Weidenfeld Hoffman Scholarship. I completed my MBA from Oxford just last year in September. And since then, I have been working at a nonprofit based in Cambridge. I am again developing and building capacity building programs for entrepreneurs, particularly social entrepreneurs. And I'm also currently starting to manage an impact fund that our nonprofit is launching, and it will help all those mid-stage startups and social enterprises who need funding, but they're unable to fulfill the requirements of general VC funding. So that's a bit about me.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Uzair, coming to you next.
Perfect. Thank you, Hannah. So my name is Uzair Ali, born and brought up in Karachi, Pakistan. Then I sort of went to Canada, did my undergrad at McGill, Started working in Toronto in private equity, so did 1.5 years in a mid-market PE firm. Over there, basically, we used to buy up businesses, boring businesses, and basically revamp those businesses and sell them later down the line. Then I moved back to Karachi, actually started my own company in the savings and investment space by the name of FinPocket. Did that for 3 years. Didn't really get the success that I envisioned. It was an amazing learning experience though. And after that, basically, I decided that I wanted some more exposure to fintech, and I started looking at places where, fintech was the hub for fintechs, and that brought me to London. And from London, basically, the natural progression was that where am I going to study? I looked up the MBA programs. There was Oxford right at the top, which was a perfect balance of, I would say, a global network, proximity to London, wider university, I would say more than a business school. And from there, basically at 2021, I started my MBA. Amazing experience, did that for 1 year. Towards the end, started working in the fintech space in London. And very early on, then basically I got a break into VC. So started working at a growth equity firm based out of London. And very recently, like 10 months ago, I joined a pre-seed seed fund based out of London only. So now I do early stage investing.
Sorry about that. My unmute failed there for a second. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Uzair. Soha, coming to you next.
Hi everyone, I'm Soha. I'm from Karachi, and I did my undergraduate in accounting and finance from LUMS. And then I started working in product management in tech. And after that, I did my master's in data science. So I always wanted to do an MBA ever since the start of my career. And after about 7 years of working, I decided to go for it. And the MBA program at Oxford was particularly interesting for me because of its focus on developing responsible business leaders. I always felt like whenever I was studying, there was this dichotomy between like what you do for like your work, like the corporate side, and what you're supposed to do for the betterment of the world. And I always felt like that was a false dichotomy. And that's why I think I applied for side business school. And I'm doing my MBA right now. I'm almost finishing. So it's been a transformative experience for me. And I am so happy. I think everybody in my life is really happy for it. I've just become a better person all around. So yeah, that's me.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Rekia, finally coming to you.
Sorry, mute keeps failing. Thank you, Hannah. So I'm from Lahore. My name is Mikhail Malik. My early education is from HSN in Lahore. Then I did my undergrad at Warwick. I did a combination of engineering and management. I spent a couple of years at JP Morgan in London on their sales trading floor. It was a great experience. And that's kind of when I decided I wanted to go to grad school. But then, with as does happen with a lot of Pakistani families, I got the call to come back home, and I did go back home. So I am a part of a family business group. We do a bunch of different things in real estate, FMCG, and a bunch of other verticals. So I spent about 2 years here. And then, my story is slightly different in the sense that I was very dead set on going to the US. And I realized by circumstance that there's no way that my family's going to let me go off for 2 years again. So I kind of came to like, what is a brilliant 1 year program that I can go to? And I started researching, and I was like, I've spent 8 years in the UK. Do I want to go back again? And it was literally down to Oxford, Cambridge, and NCAD. And for all practical purposes, NCAD was not the right fit for me because I was not going to go back looking for a job. I was going to come back to a family business, and I wanted to go to a school that kind of had more of an entrepreneurial spirit as opposed to like, a consulting feeder school or something that was feeding into banking. And off Oxford, Cambridge, I just did not feel like going to Cambridge at all. So that's kind of where Oxford came in. And I had some childhood affiliation because I had like spent summer school there when I was like 15, and that kind of that Harry Potter vibe never left me. And that's kind of how I wanted to get into Oxford. And that's, it just happened with the stroke of luck. And I think, it's been, it was the best decision ever. Also, I would say to a lot of people who are cognizant of going there as single individuals, I got married 2 weeks before my MBA, and that was also an amazing experience. Uzair is my batchmate from my 22 class, and I think the partner group is also a very big thing, and that kind of really doubles up your Oxford network globally. And after we graduated, Uzair and I, the four of us from that year, we hosted a Pakistan trek, and we had about 40 MBAs from all over the globe, which was like about, I think, 22 nationalities who came to Pakistan at the start of 23. And that was a great experience. We took them up north. They went to Lahore, Islamabad. We have lots of photos and evidence for if anyone wants to see. And I think they're coming back. Some of them are coming back again this winter because my sister is getting married, inshallah. So yeah, so I came back to Pakistan working on the family business again, but I did pivot. So on the call is Dr. Brar, who I do think of as my mentor, and he kind of pushed me into climate. So I have a climate startup now. We're doing a lot of work on the policy side, consulting side. I represent the government of Pakistan on a lot of forums, including COP. We're building a climate accelerator now, which, Dr. Brar kind of helps us, guides us on as well. So the network really goes far. And I've set up a business in the US as well that I didn't have before the MBA. So I think it does kind of make you go a level up pre and post MBA. Yeah, that's about it for me.
Wonderful, thank you. And yeah, I loved hearing all of your backstories there. I think it's testament to the diversity that students will find on the MBA, not just in terms of international diversity, but the diversity of sector backgrounds that people are coming from as well. So it's been really interesting to hear all of your undergraduate backgrounds and careers you had in advance of coming to the MBA, and hope that they really showcase to everybody that there's not really any such thing as a non-traditional MBA student for us at Said. And we're very interested in individual stories, career journeys that people have been on, and just looking through the admissions process to identify what it is you could bring to the classroom if you were to join on the MBA. So thank you all for sharing your insights on that. I can see that one person has sent through a question on the Q&A. Thank you. And we are going to dedicate some time at the end of the session to putting your questions to the panel. So if you do think of anything as we're going through the session, do please feel free to send through your questions on the Q&A, and we'll go through those at the end of the session. So we will hopefully have some people on the call today, and also who listen to the recording of the session, who will be at that point of maybe deciding which schools it is they want to apply to and trying to work out which place might be the right place for them to spend their MBA year. Some of you have touched on kind of the big things that you considered at the beginning. So I know, Soha, you mentioned the focus on responsible business, and Faria and Annabar have both talked about the impact focus, and Mecca, you mentioned there that the 1 year versus 2 years and the appeal of a 1 year program for some candidates. But interested if any of you have any other insights into what was kind of the final decision-making factor for you, and why you chose Oxford as the place that you wanted to spend your 1 year MBA. Faria, if we come back to you first.
Sure. So the first was definitely the focus on impact, and I went through not just the web page, but all the list of core modules, as well as the optional modules, as well as the co-curricular programs that Oxford Said Business School offered. And they were filled with a lot of focus on sustainability in the nonprofit sector, sustainability in the social enterprise sector. And I realized ultimately that the course outline was offering much more than other social innovation focused masters at other schools. So I looked at LSE, MSc in social innovation and entrepreneurship, and I realized that at the end of the day, what is missing in the social enterprise sector is a focus on financial sustainability. Not a lack of focus on impact, but a lack of focus on finances and commercial success. So I thought an MBA would be a much better choice than any other degree. So that was definitely the first reason. The second reason, which was again a very key factor, was the number of fundings that Oxford Said Business School offers. So I have been getting into other schools in the last 6-7 years that I have been applying to in UK, but no other school had as many scholarships on offer as Said did. So that was again a very key factor for me. And when I came to Oxford, I got to know that 2/3 of our class, and our cohort is huge. It's a 300+ cohort. So 2/3 of our class was on some sort of scholarships. And quite a few of us were on full scholarship, which is rare in business schools. Full scholarships are they don't happen. So that, again, played a key part in me deciding to come to Oxford.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Uzair, for you, I know you mentioned you were kind of London-based and working in fintech. Anything that was the final decider for you in terms of choosing Oxford for your MBA?
Yep, absolutely. So I think the main reason for me was like I realized that I wanted to have like a global career. I didn't want to restrict myself to a location. So my cost benefit analysis was that what's a name that I can take with myself all around the world. So Oxford has that extremely strong brand recognition no matter where you go. There are schools over here that that might be very competitive to Oxford, like LBS, but they still have like, you know, more brand recognition in Europe, in UK, as opposed to all over the world. That was one reason that I kind of chose Oxford, that okay, I can have a career wherever I want. Second one was that I'd already been to like, you know, a business school in my undergrad, so I studied accounting and finance at McGill. I wasn't really interested in, you know, the that much so about the curriculum. What I wanted was something more than a business school. And Oxford had that, you know, entire ecosystem of like colleges or Oxford Union, the Oxford Foundry. There was so much other stuff happening that basically added a lot to my experience. And to that note, like I would say like the Pakistani community at Oxford, it's super strong. Uh, One like example, this I met my wife at one of these dinners in a Pakistani community thing. So this is this strong that you meet amazing people that would, you know, change your have a life-changing impact on yourself. And the third one I would say is that yeah, it's the entrepreneurship thing. That I was looking for some entrepreneurship spark in the school, and when I looked at like the list of like, you know, European unicorns or top companies based out of like in Europe, there were a couple of Oxford founders on the top. So if you look at the Onfido guys, if you look at the Monzo Bank, Tom Blomfield and folks, these are like hallmark European companies, and they all sort of came from Oxford. So these three were the reasons why I chose Oxford, I would say, over another school.
Amazing, thank you. And always enjoy an MBA, well, not exactly an MBA love story, but a sort of MBA love story on one of these webinars as well. So that's amazing, thank you. So for you, I know you're coming to the end of your MBA now, so I'm sure you're feeling quite reflective on kind of the choice to spend a year at Said. What was the final deciding factor for you in choosing to come to Oxford for your MBA?
I think something similar to what Uzair said. It's like when you think about all the great people who've come to Oxford, and it's a very surreal feeling when you get here as well, and you're walking in the same streets, and you think about like all the great people who walked here before you, and all the great things that have come out of this university, like all the knowledge in the whole world that comes out of here, all the great people who do all the great things in the world. Have, you know, and it's really big shoes to fill, and it's a very humbling and exhilarating feeling at the same time, because you're like, I have to do something great. And I think I wouldn't have gotten that anywhere else. That was a huge factor for me to come here. And then like something that I mentioned earlier, the focus on responsible business leaders, like I think that's what the world needs more than anything right now. And I didn't find a similar focus elsewhere. And then the focus on diversity, like just walking the talk. Did I say that right? Walking the talk? Yes. So so yeah, I think those were the deciding factors for me.
Wonderful, thank you. And finally, Makil, I know you mentioned you were largely fixed on a 2-year MBA. So your ideal scenario would have been going to the US had you had the opportunity, but ended up choosing the 1-year program at Oxford. Anything that you were surprised by in terms of choosing a 1-year program in the end?
I think it was so I think how intense it is, but how it's not at the same time. And I know that sounds really stupid, but that's literally how your life is at Oxford, right? Like you're super, super busy, but you're actually not stressed, or at least I wasn't. And I know a lot of my friends possibly echo the same opinion, right? And I would kind of go towards what Uzair Zaire said, two of those points. The first thing is that I was looking for a holistic experience, and I think the holistic experience outside the business school, what Oxford offers or what Cambridge offers to an extent as well, is very unique globally, right? And especially, and even when you talk about the US business schools. So for me, things like the Oxford Union, what Soha was saying, like the greatness in that one hall is insane, and kind of how you get to engage with all of those. So when I was there, I ran for an election at the side. I won that, but then I lost an election at the union, and they were completely two different experiences. And had I gone into a business school only place, I would have never gone through that whole rut, right? And generally speaking, I think the colleges, the dinners, the traditions, everything about Oxford is so unique and so humbling, and also kind of movie like that. You really really have a time that you can't explain to anyone else unless they've actually gone through it, right? You people have seen the movies, but you have to kind of go through it on a daily basis to understand and appreciate. Secondly, I think from a very crude business perspective, I would say that Oxford has really, really helped me from in my entrepreneurial journey, right? From people like Dr. Brar, who really helped out whenever I've needed, to a lot of individuals in Pakistan who really are from Oxford and really feel passionately about helping each other. So a lot of those individuals I actively do business with now, or I help them, they help me out. So I do think that the bond that Oxonians feel with each other is extremely strong, and I think it's even stronger in places where the population is not very high. Right, Pakistan is still not a very densely populated Oxford place, so the help that you get and the support that you get is actually phenomenal. So I wouldn't change anything, honestly, from the experience.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good example as well, and testament to the strength of the network that students take away once they complete the program, which I know for a lot of people coming into an MBA is one of the main motivating factors that they have in pursuing it is the network that they'll take with them afterwards. So great responses there, thank you. We're going to do next maybe some highlights of your MBA year, which I know is challenging because there's often too many to choose from when we do panels. So we'll start maybe by doing a highlight inside of the classroom if we can, just so that students can get an idea of some of the kind of academic programs or classes that you guys took when you were on the MBA, and then following that we'll talk a little bit about kind of highlights outside of the classroom and any co-curriculars or wider Oxford activities that you guys want to flag. So Faria, coming back to you, any particular highlight inside of the classroom when you were on your MBA?
Yeah, like you said, it's not an easy question to answer because like Mikhail said, it was filled with so much. It was such a jam-packed experience that it's hard to pick a few. In the classroom, what I really appreciated was the diverse experiences of the cohort. You could be talking about the most successful marketing campaign of Google, and you would have someone in your classroom who had worked on that campaign. You would be talking about the vast work of BRAC, a nonprofit in Bangladesh, and you will have someone who has worked on that in that organization. So I think having a lot of people who had worked in these organizations, the experience that they brought, the discussions that it simulated, that was definitely a highlight for me in the class. I also really appreciated all the finance related courses because as someone who hadn't come from a business background or from accounting and economics, I felt like the courses were designed in a way that they kept us in mind. They kept this audience in mind. So I was able to grasp a lot of the very basic concepts, and I was also able to progress through a lot of advanced concepts as well. So I think a lot of finance courses, especially because now I wanted to pivot into impact investing. So that was really helpful for me. Outside of the class, I really loved participating in the co-curricular program Impact Lab. I think the sessions that we had from Impact Lab were super helpful. They taught us, they gave us a good glimpse into how social change happens, what are the right questions to ask, and what are the different actors and stakeholders that are moving the levers in the world and the nonprofit sector, and how you can use that to your advantage. So I think it was a very eye-opening experience. Other than that, I think Said Business School was so inclusive. We used to have events and functions for almost every group of every community that was there in Oxford. So we would have Eid, Diwali, Holi, Chinese New Year, we would have a Latin American event, we would have a lot of African festivals. So every community, and by the way, had a large representation of different communities from around the world. They brought their own food, they brought their own festivals, they brought their own cultures and traditions, and the entire school would gather to celebrate that. And the management of Science Business School was very, very accommodating. When it came to that, they were always very supportive, and they made sure that everyone had the room to represent their films. So these are some of the very few highlights that I can share now. It was a worthy a year that was just filled with a lifetime's worth of experiences.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Is there for you highlight inside of the classroom and outside of the classroom?
Perfect. So inside the classroom, I would say it's one course that I took, which was very different from a typical business course. It's called the Leadership and Perspective of Humanities. And that's, I think, a course you can only have at a place like Oxford. So what we did in this course was that we would get out of the classroom, we would go to these 900-year-old colleges, 1,000-year-old colleges. We would learn about the architecture of those colleges in one class. Second class, we would go to the world's oldest theater, which is also probably in Oxford, and over there listen to an orchestra. And basically the goal was, it wasn't like that this was unrelated to business. It sort of showed, like for example, if you're listening to a choir and orchestra, like how in sync they are, what teamwork is, and you're sort of deriving lessons from that stuff as opposed to directly, somebody telling you what teamwork is. You're seeing that in action. So that was the highlight for me in terms of like the academic. And non-academic, it has to be the MBATs. So MBATs is an MBA tournament that happened in HEC Paris. So over 200 of us, we all went to Paris and we participated in different sports. Me and Mikhail played cricket. We put up a 150-run partnership. I remember that. And I would say like it goes back to like Mikhail's point of, it's these experiences like the MBATs, the college dinners, the other, traditions, the Oxford Union, where you see your cohort apart from the classroom. And that leads to, bonds that are much stronger than what you would have in a typical business school. Like I remember by the end of the cohort, I knew everybody, not just like they would say hi to me and I would say hi back. I knew everybody in my classroom to a certain extent that I knew what they did before, what are they going to do after, and we had a conversation before during the year, even though the cohort was like 350. And that sort of materializes when you set foot in the professional world. Like now that I am working in venture, like I've had like two people from my cohort join my company that I work with. We've had a deal struck with another one of our cohort members. So you're actually going to start making things happen because the bond you share is more than just a name on a paper that you were in the same class. You've actually had like quality interactions. So yeah, those two would be my top experiences, I say.
Amazing, thank you. So for you, I know you're still technically, your highlights in the classroom are still happening, but any highlights inside the classroom and outside the classroom for you?
There's so many to pick from, but I'll just talk about this one experience. This was my finance class, and even though I'd studied finance before, there was this one little group assignment that we had for fun. It wasn't graded or anything. It was about having a list of like companies and like their financial metrics and everything. List of projects and the financial metrics of the projects, like the ROI, NPV, etc. And then we had to stand in front of our class and convince them to vote for our project, which is a really good exercise in like leadership, because you're sort of convincing a room full of people to do what you want. And I came into the classroom and I did like an oratory style, debate to convince my classroom that to vote for me, and I got a standing ovation. And I think that's so important to learn that leadership is so multifaceted, but a huge part of it is convincing people of your ideas and leading them. So, so yeah, that was my highlight from within the classroom. But like Uzair said, like the leadership perspectives from the humanities, reputation and leadership, negotiations, every course was so it just made me think about my life and what I want to do. And this whole just in a different way than I would have before. And I joke with my friends and I say that I've changed a lot as a person, but you wouldn't be able to tell it from one day to the next. But if you look at it from like last year's perspective, definitely there's been a lot of small changes. So that was within the classroom, and outside the classroom, just the really, so you have two kinds of friendships. And I think somebody said that in the beginning of the MBA, you have like the depth of friendship, and it's like a T, like the width of friendship. So the amount of people you know, like on an acquaintance basis, and then the depth of relationships. So I've had the pleasure of building some really, really nice friendships with people, not just within the MBA, but outside of the MBA as well. And it has been very, as somebody who's lived in Pakistan all my life, it has been a really good experience to learn from people who've had much different lives than mine. So yeah, that's it.
Wonderful examples also, thank you. And finally, Mikhail, for you?
I think my absolute favorite class was something called negotiations, and going into the class, I didn't realize why it was oversubscribed 3x and why they had to like make 3 new modules for it. But honestly, obviously the quality of teaching in Oxford is insane. But so it was very interesting because technically do negotiations on a daily basis with bankers, with my employees, with my clients, with my contractors. But how the professor made a class for like 60 people, and how all of us were at the beginning of it extremely uncomfortable negotiating with our friends, and how all of us in some way became snakes to each other, was absolutely phenomenal. And it was literally very hard to it's very hard to negotiate with someone you like or are friends with or have some sort of emotional attachment to. But I think that training over the 6 weeks of that course, I think it was in the summer when I did it, it was absolutely phenomenal. I think I would say if there's one course that I would have to highlight that I still use on a daily basis, is that one, because whenever I'm being bad at negotiations, I remind myself of what I did in Oxford in those days, right? And kind of echoing what Soha said as well, you'd have someone who's an investment banker negotiate with you in a certain way, who's spent their life in the US. Then you'd have someone from Kenya who's like this massive person who has a bunch of hotels, and they would negotiate in a completely different way. So like, you get a diversity of the kind of negotiation styles as well, and you get that back home in business as well when you're trying to like work on different deals. So I would say negotiations was like my top choice inside the classroom. Outside the classroom, I think that T is, I could not phrase it any better. And I think the depth of relationships you kind of understand post your MBA as well, right? And for me, the biggest win was when a bunch of these people decided to come to Pakistan. I mean, they got all sorts of security concerns from their embassies. They had preconceived notions on what the country was like, and when they came in, all of that kind of evaporated, and they left with extremely positive notions, I would hope, or what they've told me, right? So I think that I take away as the best outside the classroom moment. And that didn't really come off because we said hi to each other in the classroom. That came off because we would go to picnics, we would travel together, we would have lunch together on a daily basis, because the whole program is designed in a way that you kind of in some way inadvertently spend a lot of time with each other. And because Oxford is a very small town, wherever you go you would find an MBA. And honestly, by the way, people who have not been to Oxford as MBAs will find out later in life that Oxford MBAs are hated because they're everywhere. So yeah, I think that's kind of my takeaway.
I love that. And yeah, I think it is good to highlight, because obviously one of the things I think that's challenging for people when they're thinking about coming to Oxford is that maybe they haven't had the opportunity to be to the city before as well. So it's good to give that context, and can reassure people that even if MBAs are hated by the wider community, they're very much loved at Said. So they'll always have a safe haven across the city. We've had some questions come through that we are going to get to now. For anybody who's on the call, if you do have any more questions, do feel free to send them through to us via the Q&A. One question that I saw is something that we haven't talked about greatly, but is somebody who's asking about the college allocation system and how it works in terms of applying. So I can talk a little bit about kind of the technicalities of that, but do you all want to say a little bit just about which college you're at, and if anybody has any insights into the application process of whether you got your first choice or you didn't, or just any insights you have around your college in general. Faria, coming to you first, which college were you part of?
So I was part of Keeble, and that was my first choice because for practical reasons, I looked through all the postgrad accommodation, and Keeble seemed to have the most number of postgrad rooms. So I just applied to that, and I later got to know the other perks as well. It has a huge history. It's a huge college. It has a lot of offers for. It has a very thriving postgrad community. It does a lot of events and socials for the postgrad community. So for me, it was a nice experience. And college is something you select or you opt for once you have already been accepted to a program. So that's how it was in my case.
Perfect. Thank you. Azar, for you, which college were you part of?
So I was part of Green Templeton, and mine was the decision was twofold, if I remember correctly. One was logistical. So the Green Templeton had a residence right behind the business school. So where I lived, I used to just get up and I could be in the business school in like 5 minutes. The second one was that I had like a bunch of MBAs joining Green Templeton. And that's where I basically applied first, because at the outset, I didn't know that much about colleges. But coming in, I would say like it was a really good college in the sense that we used to have like regular gatherings over there. I still have some friends from my college days. And you get to see like the entire college ecosystem in Oxford, like Mikhail said, you know, the dinners, going to colleges for like in the common rooms, etc. You pretty much get to engage with that ecosystem, but how much you engage is primarily up to you.
Yeah.
Basically, like in Oxford, you have to pick your battles. Like there's so much to do, you can't do everything. So you choose what you want to do.
Amazing. Thank you. Good advice as well. And yeah, really great that you've both highlighted the practical aspect when choosing of the accommodation offer in particular. So looking at where it's located and what the offer is when choosing. So for you, which college are you part of?
So I'm part of Lady Margaret Hall. I wanted to select, like I was really keen on getting into Lady Margaret Hall because of the strong affiliation with Pakistan, as well as, you know, the amazing women who've gone there before me. So that was my choice. I really didn't think about the accommodation. I should have, but I think I just got lucky. It's a really good college with a lot of greenery, and it's just all around beautiful, and it really cares about its members as well. So yeah.
Thank you. And Mikhail, for you?
Just want to kind of add to what Fariha and Soha said. The college Fariha is at is where Imran Khan went, and where Soha is at is where Benazir and Malala went. So a lot of his Pakistani history affiliated with this. For me, the logistical angle was twofold. First, for me, because it was so I went to Pembroke College. Sorry, Pembroke is 5-10 minutes away from side. But the second problem was that my wife wanted to be next to the shopping mall, and Pembroke College is right next to Westgate, so that helped. And the last bit was a slightly emotional decision in the sense that when I went to summer school, it was actually based out of Pembroke. So I just kind of wanted to go back to where I came initially.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, those are all really interesting insights, and I think very reflective of the different processes people will go through when choosing. So some people who do choose based on a connection to the city, maybe having visited before, spent time in a college, maybe to the history of a particular college or people who went there. And then lots of students going for the more practical approach of, okay, where is this college? Where is the accommodation based? So it's very dependent, I think, on what type of person you are in terms of your planning. And yeah, just to flag a little bit in terms of the process. So as Faria mentioned, once you've been admitted to the MBA, you then get to give an option or a choice of which college you would like to apply to be a member of. You only get to give one choice. So the ideal scenario is that you get a place in the college that you have selected. If that doesn't happen, which is the case for some MBA students, you will be allocated a college place from there. So every student who joins the university and who joins the business school does have to belong to a college. I would say best advice, if the college piece is a big part of your motivation in coming to Oxford and you have very specific college that you would like to apply to be part of, then applying early definitely helps with that. So the college places are more available in the early rounds. If you do wait until kind of the later rounds to apply, you run the risk that some of the places at the colleges where maybe they only take, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 MBA students every year fill relatively quickly. So do bear that in mind if you're someone who's very fixed on a certain college, and then applying early definitely gives you a better chance of being admitted to your first choice. Thank you all for sharing your insights on that. Someone who's asked a question here, which I think is interesting. So this is somebody who's asking about how much your prior, I think they're asking in relation to admissions, but I think it's relevant relevant in terms of the MBA itself. So they're asking how much your prior work experience mattered as much as the grades that you acquired during your undergraduate. So I guess I'm going to answer in relation to the application, but I'd be interested to hear from the panel, I suppose, how much you felt your academic background was of benefit versus how much your professional background was of benefit when you came to the MBA. So for the application process, I would say they hold equal weight. The process is largely holistic, and there's essentially, I guess, kind of three strands of you that the committee is looking to explore. So they're looking to learn about your academic profile, your professional profile, but your personal profile as well, which we've touched on a little bit earlier in terms of, you know, your unique experience and what it is you can add to the cohort. So I think for us, academic profile and professional profile hold equal weight, and the committee are interested in both. I would say in relation to undergraduate degree, it's good to flag that there's no particular subject background that adds weight to your application, so that the committee are not very keen to have a vast number of students who are coming from a particular undergraduate degree background. And similarly, there's no minimum GPA requirement to apply for the MBA either. So there's a guide on the website that gives you an idea of the sort of degree scores that the committee look for, but they will look at your undergraduate degree in relation to the rest of your academic profile, so including any master's degrees that you might have, and obviously your GMAT or GRE score that you will submit as part of the application as well, they will take a look at also. So it's a much more holistic piece in terms of admissions. I'm interested for the panel, anybody have any insights on whether they felt their professional experience added or was of less benefit? So you've raised your hand.
Yeah, so one second, let me just lower my hand first. So it's funnily enough, I didn't have a good undergraduate GPA. It wasn't a terrible undergraduate GPA. It was a 3.2, which is just mediocre. So I knew I wanted to go to Oxford, right? So then based off of I had conversations with people, and I realized I would like to do a master's degree to get a higher GPA. So if you feel like there's some shortages in your background, like that you want to overcome to be able to come to a place like Oxford, then I would say then you can always work on making it better. My professional background was very strong, but because I didn't want to take any risks, I didn't entirely just do the master's degree to get into Oxford, but it was definitely a motivation. And then when I did my master's, I worked hard enough to get the first position in my master's degree. So yeah, it's not like one of those things where it's definitely just you're not gonna get in ever. It's just you can always work to improve your profile if you want to come to Oxford or any other good university.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Really good advice. Thank you. We've had a couple of questions through that are focused on scholarships, which I'll take very quickly. And I'm going to ask my colleague Hazel to just pop into the chat box the graduate scholarship search engine, Hazel, if you can. So essentially there's people asking, because Farhia mentioned that she was a recipient of the Weidenfeld-Hoffmann scholarship, which does provide a fully funded place on the MBA if you are successful in that process. So there's a number of questions around kind of what are the chances of getting a 100% scholarship to come and do the MBA. I would say in general, in terms of scholarship support, the best advice is to do early research. Hazel will pop into the chat. There's a very helpful graduate university scholarship search engine that you can use, where you can input some information about yourself and it will generate for you a list of any scholarships that you are eligible to apply for or to be considered for if you are admitted to the MBA. I would say some to flag if you are somebody who is very keen on kind of full funding to come and do the MBA. So Weidenfeld-Hoffmann, as Faria mentioned, we have a batch of scholarships called the Laidlaw scholarships, which are specifically looking to support women who are looking to pursue business school education. I think we award 8 to 10 Laidlaw scholarships every year, and a big volume of those provide fully funded places to students coming onto the MBA. The Scholl scholarship is another good one to look at in terms of full funding. funding. SCOL looks to support students who are working in social entrepreneurship or social entrepreneurship in advance of coming to the MBA. And also Abrar mentioned at the beginning as well, in terms of the 1+1 programme, there's an excellent scholarship opportunity called the Pershing Square Scholarship, which provides candidates with full funding for both the first year and second year that they're studying at Oxford, if you are successful in that programme. So there are a number of fully funded scholarships that are available to candidates. I would say best advice in addition to early research is don't let funding be a barrier to applying for the programme. You can't find out if you've been selected for any of the scholarships before you find out if you've been admitted to the MBA. So that the first hurdle to get over is to apply for the programme and to get in. And from there, you can then explore the scholarships and funding options that are available to you. So yeah, do some early research, but we flagged there just some of the scholarship opportunities that are available for candidates who are looking for kind of fully funded places to come onto the MBA. And I think the final question that we have there is kind of admissions focused, and my colleague Hazel is going to respond to that, which brings us to perfect timing for the end of the session. Just to finish up, I'd just quickly like to ask either all of you or any of you who have some insight, if we do have some people who are on the webinar or who are listening to the recording and who are thinking of applying for the MBA or to take up a place at Oxford, any words of wisdom or advice that any of you would have to finish up for any prospective Oxford applicants on the call?
The only thing I would say is that when I was applying, I thought it was an impossible thing to do. And I realized, as Hannah said, that, there's no Superman or Superwoman out there. So I do think everyone should just give it their best shot. And FYI, for myself, I didn't have a great GMAT score. I tried twice, but I think, I guess Hannah and the team found something that was okay to let in. So I would just say, just push, try, and, just give it your shot.
Amazing advice. Faria, I saw you had your hand up also.
I completely agree with Mikhail. My undergrad score as well as my GPA score wasn't stellar, but I did realize that Oxford admission teams look at much more than just your grades. So definitely look into that. Secondly, one thing that really helped me for the application was a lot of clarity and a lot of research. So Oxford application is really extensive. It asks you extensive questions about your past experience as well as your future plans. So the more you know your field inside out, and the more you're able to tie your past experience to your future plans, even if you're pivoting, you should have a reason in your motivation of why you're pivoting. You should know how your past experience, what aspects of your past experience are going to feed into your new goals. So as the more clear you are and the more research you have undertaken, I think that will shine through in your application.
Wonderful. I'm going to come to you last, Abrar. Is Erica just coming to you quickly? Oh, you're on mute still.
So sorry.
Thank
My
you.
only advice would be to sort of like think long term. Don't think of this as like a 1-year program. It's actually when the program ends that the real value kind of starts accruing. It's like your colleagues will go on to lead, corporations all over the world, and that's when the program really starts paying dividends. So when you look at all the GMAT in front of you, the application process in front of you, it might seem tedious, but realize that once you're at the other end of this bridge, there's a lot of dividends that accrue later on. So yeah, just think long term, I would say.
Wonderful. And I'm really making you wait, Abrar. I'm going to come to Soha and then you finally.
I just want to say one thing, just ask for help, like reach out to people on LinkedIn and ask, because that's what I did when I decided to go, like when I decided to apply finally, I reached out to people and people are so kind and helpful. People also reach out to me and I'm very happy to help them as well. So if you have any questions, just reach out to people on LinkedIn, ask them, and some will probably not reply as well, but there will always be 1 or 2 people who do. So
amazing advice. Thank you. And finally, Abrar, coming to you.
Oh, thank you. So these were all wonderful advice. I hope someone had given me this advice when I was thinking about applying. We didn't have very active LinkedIn then, so it's very hard to get to people. But I just want to say, having like spent, interacting with many students here on scholarships or who doing their MBA, I think one thing I have picked out, again, that everyone has some story, and everyone has a story. So it's not that but it's all about, for you, as someone said, really reflecting of who you are. And I think being genuine and being authentic and just I'll give you an insight, just coming from Pakistan, we have already so many challenges. So really think, even if you reflect back, because often we, when we live in countries like Pakistan, we take many things for granted. But, if you step back and you look at your life, you realize you're probably doing many things. You're helping, or you're providing support, or, you're contributing to the country in some way or the other. And so I think just reflecting back on that story and then bringing that story to life is really what people look at. And also think about, when you're building your story, imagine that you're sitting in the MBA class. What is the story you want to tell? What's your contribution to that class? And I think that will really help you reflect who you are and what you want to bring. But believe me, you will have a story. So just work on that.
Amazing advice. Thank you very much, and a perfect way to end the session, I think. Just to say finally, a big thank you to all of our panelists today, to Dr. Chowdhury, but also to Faria, Azair, Mikhail and Soha as well for sharing their time and their experiences with us. We hope that you found the content useful and also motivating, and that lots of you are now going to go away and do some research. If you do have any further questions about the application process, do reach out to the recruitment and admissions team via our website, and we'll be very happy to help and advise anybody who's considering an application for the programme as well. Huge thank you to everybody for giving their time, and we look forward to hopefully hearing from many of you in the future.